What motivated you to write Voices of a People's History of the United States?
The idea was that my book, A People's History of the United States, which has by now reached a lot of people, People's History of the United States is full of little nuggets of quotations from all sorts of people, right? Well, very often people who are traditionally left out of the history books, fugitive slaves and striking workers and Native Americans and war resistors, pacifists and radicals. So a lot of little paragraphs of quotes in people's history, and we thought, well, people have found that very, very compelling, and very often when people have talked about a people's history of the United States, they've referred to those little nuggets of words uttered by people that we don't encounter in usual history books. So the idea was that we would expand on those nuggets, that we'd create a book of just the voices of people, and to a large extent the voices of people that most have never heard of, starting with Las Casas, who is the Spanish priest who, you might say, blew the whistle on Columbus and exposed Columbus's crimes, the crimes of the Spaniards when they came into the West Indies. And we have sort of letters from slaves and petitions against slavery and indentured servants of the 17th and 18th century writing about the conditions under which they lived. And instead of the words of the founding fathers, which of course get enormous attention. I mean, think of all the volumes on John Adams and Madison and Jefferson and Washington. They're still bestsellers, but instead, when we're dealing with the revolution, we're talking about the Stamp Act rioters in Boston. We're talking about the ordinary people who participated in the Boston Massacre and their accounts. Or we have the letter from a Revolutionary War soldier telling about what the ordinary soldier suffered.
Yeah, I find that really interesting because just in looking at our current environment with the war in Iraq, some of the criticisms about the administration's handling of it, we heard this from John Kerry, saying that our soldiers were not equipped to fight this battle.
Yeah.
And then here we have this soldier writing in that they didn't have shoes on their feet.
That's
and what was
right.
it? They said it was rub and go. What was that,
right.
like rub your feet to warm them and then
That's
get out in the
right.
trenches? Where in contrast, you had the generals that were eating, this really great food and were taken care of.
Exactly. And that's why we had the mutinies in the Revolutionary Army. And of course, we're trying to dig deeper even than the question of are they well equipped. Unfortunately, John Kerry doesn't dig deeper when he says this troops aren't well equipped, because the implication is that, well, if they were well equipped, then it would be okay. Then the war might be okay. But we raise questions about war, even about the Revolutionary War, because the treatment of the soldiers and the fact that they're ill-equipped suggests a larger question than the question of whether they're being sort of treated well with food and clothing. Raises the question of, is this really a war for the ordinary person, or is this a war for the elite? And in fact, we include in our readings a letter that General Knox, one of George Washington's generals, writes to Washington. This is right after the Revolutionary War, and he writes to George Washington, and he's a member of the elite, and he's angry because the soldiers who have come back from the Revolution are rebelling against landlords and against legislators in Massachusetts. It's called Shays' Rebellion, and he is saying, who are these people who they think that because they fought in the Revolution that they're entitled to an equal share of the wealth of this country? In other words, we are bringing out the class issues in the American Revolution. And we are bringing out the class issues in the American Revolution. And we are bringing out the class issues in the American Revolution. And we are bringing out the class issues in the American Revolution. And we are bringing out the class issues in the American Revolution. And we are bringing out the class issues in the American Revolution. And we are bringing out the class issues in the American Revolution. And we are bringing out the class issues in the American Revolution. And we are bringing out the class issues in the American Revolution. And we are bringing out the class issues in the American Revolution. And we are bringing out the class issues in the American Revolution. And we are bringing out the class issues in the American Revolution. And we are bringing out the class issues in the American Revolution. And we are bringing out the class issues in the American Revolution. And we are bringing out the class issues in the American Revolution. And we are bringing out the class issues in the American Revolution. And we are bringing out the class issues in It is not just a revolution of American colonists against England. It was very complex because it was within the revolution there was conflict between the rich and the poor, between the generals and the soldiers, between the landlords and the tenants. And after the revolution, that became very, very clear when you had these rebellions that took place of farmers in Massachusetts and other states. So this is the kind of thing we do. We're bringing class and race and dissidence into the traditional historical picture.